Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy is Ted.
Today we're going to talk about your D&D character is more than a bunch of numbers on a character sheet.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
All right, Ted, character building can be hard, especially if you want to focus on the role-playing aspect of the game and not so much the numbers and the crunch, or even just trying to interpret those into how does this make an adventurer? How does this make what could be a real quote unquote person?
Well, we really have to look at a number of different jumping off points and say that instead of let's start with the mechanical, let's start with the other side. And if you create a character from that perspective first, like, oh man, I really want to be an elven archer. Well, mechanically, you can take that in a number of different ways, but the concept of being an elf and using a missile weapon,
It's not really a person.
it's not a person, and it's not a character, like, because you could be a ranged combatant with many different classes in D&D.
Yeah, so we're going to look at jumping off points, and there's several different ones we've got. We got themes, type, voice, story. These are all elements you can look at in order to come up with your character concept from the story, not so much of the mechanical part. And we can fill in the math later. That's the easy part.
Absolutely. Now, maybe you're inspired by something you read in a novel, maybe by something you saw on TV or in the movies, and it's really sparked your imagination. And as I said, you could, as you said, you got a theme, and I put forth the elven archer, but maybe you want to be even more broad and just say, well, I want to be a witch or someone who hunts witches. This is a base concept, something that you have the ability to work with and turn into something later.
You know, it kind of reminds me of one of our favorite books, one of our favorite series, Last of the Renchai. Mm-hmm. And there was a character that was introduced, and he would always call himself a hunter. That was his profession. That was what he did. But another character, Colby, who was a soldier, would always refer to him as Archer, and he hated it. Because, the Archer, it was the idea of war and killing, where, he hunted to provide food, so he didn't want it to be defined that way, right? So that goes back to talking about your elven archer, right? Had he been an elf, he would have been an elven archer. Mm-hmm. But his personality, it can be so much more. Like the story element of that is, he's a hunter. That's his profession. That's what he does. He's in the wilderness. So from there, it might start actually defining some of those mechanical traits. But we don't even have to go there quite yet.
But before we even get into that, we look at the personality traits, the story elements that are invoked there. He doesn't want to be defined as an archer because he associates that with war, with killing humans. Whereas being a hunter, he's merely out to hunt for sustenance, for food. If you're a hunter and he cares about that stuff, well, then he's probably taken the hide and using that for leather work, for furs. So he's being more respectful to the animals that he's killing, and that's going to further tell about his characters. And once you get to the mechanics, well, what skills is he going to have? What class that might denote? Well, if you might want to go archer to kill people, well, you might want to go fighter. But if you're thinking hunter, you might lean towards ranger. And that's a story-driven, a role-playing driven choice, not a mechanical choice.
And that's just one type. And I had mentioned voice, right? And it seems like kind of an odd place to start. But when we did our Savor Dice collab game, for the first 2 seasons, I played different characters, and I wanted to experiment with a different part of the game. And that was actually trying to take on a voice for a character that was different than my own and trying to stick with it while playing in character. So the very first season, I went with Jogo the Giant, who had like a really deep and rumbly voice. And then from there, I kind of like built out my character. Again, season 2, same thing. I went with Worm, who is a kobold and a reptilian, and I'm like, this is another voice. And both of those characters had voices that are significantly different than my own. So I wanted to stretch my ability to role play with using these different voices, and then I build up the stories and the mechanics around those voices. So there's a lot of different places you can go before you even look at mechanics when you're building your character and trying to breathe some life into them.
So maybe while you're DMing, you make an NPC and you give them a voice, and you really like that, and so you want to work with it. Maybe you're gaming and one of the players is like, man, you really nailed the voice for that gnome wizard. You should do more with it. Or maybe you're just someone who plays around with stuff from watching TV shows and what have you, and you really want to reach out and experiment with, well, what can I do? How high pitched can I get? How low can I get? How deep can my voice get? And as you play around and experiment, you might find something that you can replicate and that you enjoy. And by doing so, you've got the ability to create a character around that. You did it solely by making that voice first, but now you want to breathe more life into it.
We also talked about type. What exactly does that mean?
So type is when you're playing against or playing with something that's out there. All right, well, I want to play that gnome illusionist. That's totally right within the ballpark of what everybody expects gnomes to be. I want to play that half-orc barbarian. That's totally right within the line of where players see that race going. When you play against type, that's where you go with something that's a little bit more unorthodox. Oh, well, I want to play that halfling barbarian. I want to play that half-orc wizard. These things, they don't look like they go together. The Lego blocks just don't connect. But it can be a lot of fun when you start making things that don't normally go together work. Yeah, you might not be the most mechanically superior character, but you're going to have stories to tell. And how on earth did that half-orc, learn magic? How did that halfling decide that it was going to, pick up that large weapon and start beating things? He's kind of small. What's going on?
Why is he so full of anger and rage? They're all good points. And, you get the same thing when you play with type too, really, because you're like, how am I going to define my dwarven fighter as something more than just being a dwarven fighter? What's going to make him special? Which that kind of even segues into like story elements as a jumping off point as well. Like my character I'm playing in Ted's game, Uthengar Blackiron, was because I wanted to make a clan of dwarves centered around spellcasting. I thought, it's really cool in 5th edition at first level. I can play a wizard and wear armor as a dwarf, but how can I make this make sense? What is the story there? So in their clan, that particular clan was tasked with the job of gathering arcane secrets and magic and bringing it back to the hold. And from there, I developed this fighter wizard character that is suboptimal, but he's a ton of fun to play.
Absolutely. So you can build these things from any of these jumping off points. But once you start with one, you really have the ability to ribbon and weave and snake your way through the others. All right, well, you pick something that you want to go against type. All right, well, does he have a voice? And that could be your typical, well, what is the speaking voice when you speak in that character? But it can speak a little bit to their personality, their goals, what kind of things do they have going on? Once you start building this stuff, does it have a theme? What do you see this building? Oh, he's a dwarf fighter wizard. All right, well that's clearly locked into a character class, but to an extent that's also a theme. And then you can look at your story elements that you want to wrap in. And so it doesn't matter which of these 4 you want to start with. You're going to wrap them all together to form this little cohesive element. And then from there, then you can really dive into the mechanics of it all and make it all make sense.
Right, you're going to take those elements, and from that, you're going to kind of pull out a character class and the races, which is really easy. And in 5e, then you're going to figure out what background fits with it. And from there, then you can crunch the numbers, and they're going to tell the rest of the story.
That background choice can be something that's like, oh, well, that can help define, a dwarven wizard who winds up going out there to find magic. Well, how is he going to stand out? Well, Maybe he's an outlander because he's out exploring. Maybe he's a sage because he's more the librarian and he's hoping to find that ancient magic within books. Maybe he's an acolyte and he was studying under a priest of magic. All these things totally make sense with that character, but by having that different background choice being made, it's made a completely different character and how it's going to role play and it's skill choices.
So hopefully by the end of that, you have a living, breathing person that you're going to get to play at the table and not just a jumble of numbers and rolling funny shaped dice. The question is, guys, how do you go about building your characters? What are the important aspects to you? How do you tell the story? We got a place where we can discuss that. That's down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on Facebook.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.